Welcome to the Susan LoPresti Wellness Mind, Body, and Soul podcast. This is your go-to space for midlife and mature women who are ready to reclaim their health, boost their energy, and live long, vibrant, and purposeful lives. Each week, we dive deep into natural wellness, holistic healing, anti-aging strategies, and healthy lifestyle habits to help you feel your best physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Whether you're navigating menopause, working through chronic conditions, or simply wanting to age gracefully and intentionally, this show is your sanctuary for science-backed insights, powerful stories, and soul-nourishing inspiration. So if you're a woman over 40 or 50 or older looking to thrive in the next chapter of your life, you're in the right place. Before I introduce you to today's guest, I would like to talk to you about a product that I've been using. And I'll be honest, I was skeptical. Whenever I hear an all-in-one skincare, I assume it's doing a lot of talking and not much working. But Skin at Work surprised me. Their super stacked clinical strength creams are designed to actually replace multiple steps, brightening, tightening, hydrating, and repairing in one simple formula. No 10-step routine, no cluttered counter, just clean, vegan, cruelty-free skincare made in the USA that works as hard as you do. So if you're busy, wellness-minded, and tired of overcomplicated skincare, check out Skin at Work. Sometimes less really does more. And you could find the link in the show notes to try Skin at Work for yourself. And now let's go on to today's guest, who is a powerful example of what becomes possible when inner awareness meets intentional action. I'm joined by Carmell Clark, an executive coach, a keynote speaker whose work is centered on expanding and elevating consciousness, starting from within and mapping it directly into real-world impact. Carmell has built women's leadership programs that help mid-level managers rise confidently into the C-suite. She's designed international retreats that allow women to experience true freedom on a soul deep level. And she's created transformational curricula that turn inward reflection into authentic influence, both personally and professionally. But Carmell's work is deeply personal. After experiencing profound loss, she built her entire life and career by leaning into radical self-awareness and purpose. Her journey mirrors the path so many of you are on. Women who know there's more, who are ready to step into clarity, confidence, and aligned leadership in mind, body, and soul. This is a conversation about resilience, vision, conscious leadership, and what happens when we choose to rise no matter where we've been. Please join me in welcoming Carmell Clark to the show. I'm so honored to have you here today, and I really can't wait to dive into this conversation with you.
Me too, Susan. Thank you so much for having me on. Really, it's an honor to be here. I'm excited to really go where we're going to go today.
Yes, it's my pleasure. For my listeners who are meeting you for the very first time, how do you describe the work that you do and the deeper mission that behind it?
The deeper mission of the work that I do really is raising individual consciousness, like helping people develop their self-awareness and expand their consciousness for themselves in their lives. That takes me into personal areas, it takes me into business and professional training and leadership. It takes me into relationships and health, which is also your focus. So there are a lot of different areas that our work of our own consciousness in ourselves affects and takes us. So that would be the underlying piece. And I would say that really what drives me in that is what I would call freedom. I feel like what work we do with ourselves to become more aware, to become more self-actualized, to become more conscious, expands our freedom. It doesn't necessarily change all the challenges we have. It doesn't change the challenges we face in the world and in our lives every day, but it does change us. And as one of my dear clients from long back said to me, he said, I realized finally that I can't change anything or anyone else, but I can change me. And if I can change me, then everything else changes,
Yeah.
which I think is quite profound.
So I want to ask you, what is the process of getting someone to be more self-aware?
Oh, that's a great question. Like a really great question. I don't think anybody's ever asked me that question, Susan. Wow. Okay. Top points on that question. What is the process of getting someone more self-aware? The first thing that I would answer to that is connection. So when I meet someone, the ability to see who someone really is and connect at a deep level. It's not about like, where did you come from, or tell me what you do for a living, or that kind of thing. Those are more surface answers. What I'm talking about is who somebody is at a deep level. And when we see and understand each other at a deep level, we touch our own consciousness in a real and profound way. I know you've experienced this. You're leading podcasts, so you have lots of time and experience in meeting people and knowing those people who will really open themselves up, or
Yeah.
those people who just want to give you more like the answers that they think people want to hear,
Yeah.
right? There's a difference.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So then in that, I would say that deep connection is the beginning of helping people to develop their conscious awareness. The other thing I would say is life itself provides a lot of challenges all the time. And because of that, when we get to a point with our challenges where we finally just start to question them and to question ourselves in those challenges, it's a doorway that we can open and learn more about ourselves. One of the things about your history, this Hashimoto's and celiac, and the health journey that you've been on and where that's taken you, is a really great example of you having come to a point, I'm sure, where you realized that allopathic medicine could only give you so much information, and that you were going to have to go much further, both in your search for what you could do to help your health, but also in yourself being, to be able to heal and to create and develop a life that was completely and entirely different from what you had before.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Consciousness,
Yeah.
that's the word. Yes.
Oh, I love that. I love that. So your life and your career were profoundly reshaped by personal loss, and it's up to you how deep you want to share with that. But how has that experience changed the way that you see yourself and your purpose?
Oh, really good. Thank you for the great questions. I would say I'm not the only one who's experienced deep and profound loss. I find that all over, almost on a daily basis. And in fact, right now, I've a number of people in my life close who are dealing with some unthinkable situations that do happen sometimes in life to certain people. And the thing that I guess I would say, first of all, is my own walking through my experiences, not closing my eyes, not trying to numb it out.
Yeah.
um, I had a few moments where one night I drank a lot of wine. The next morning I was like, nope, that's not the path for me. Another one was Xanax one night. And the next day it was like something inside me said, no, Carmel, it's not your path. And I'm not, that's not a referendum on anybody else and their choices that they make. But for me, my path required eyes open, feeling every single bit of it every day, and suffering from anxiety for the first time in my life because of it. The compassion and the understanding in that has really helped me be able to see and recognize and understand others on a whole different level. I already was intuitive. I grew up that way. This opened it up in a completely deeper and more profound level for me. And in terms of helping me move into the space of my purpose, I would say, Susan, for the first 2.5 years, there was nothing. Like literally, the loss that I walked through took the spark out of everything. And I didn't know if it would ever come back. And I had to learn how to be with myself in my life every day without the spark that had been there from the very beginning for me. Like I just had it my whole life. And that was really a self-awareness journey, right? Who am I without that spark of direction? Who am I without the clear plan and direction and what I'm going to do next and all of that? And so it was in that space of nothing, over about 2.5 years of nothing, just getting up, going to work every day, doing the work that I did, giving my whole self that I could to the work, but not having that deeper spark and connection, that finally one day something happened into my world. It was a plane ticket to Paris. I guess is probably what I could say. And it was a dream I'd always had, and I couldn't say no to that. And I let go of everything, put everything in order, and I left without knowing if I would come back.
Wow.
Yeah, that was 42 years old. And it was that point. What I would say about it is this, that no matter what we're going through, there is a timer in our lives and we can't rush it. And if we try, we end up creating more problems. We have to listen to and trust this timer in our lives. Now, sometimes that timer is like all systems go, give it everything you've got, like move heaven
Yeah.
and earth, like really. And other times it's like, no matter what you do, you're not going to be able to advance anything. You're not going to be able to get out of this position that you're in right now. You just need to be here and wait and be, and eventually the timer is going to shift again. And so that's really what happened. And all of a sudden I had this ticket land in my lap, and 2.5 weeks later, I ended up in Europe for the first time, traveling without a plan, by myself, not knowing anybody, having high school and college French to rely on.
Good luck with that.
Right? Good luck with that. And and what happened, besides being terrified every day because sometimes I didn't know where I was going to sleep that night or the next day, because I didn't have a plan, which was a microcosm of my whole life now. Amidst all of that anxiety and that terror was also just this expansion of my being and awe and wonder every single day at everything I was taking. It was all new, right? And that was this new reinvention, this generation of myself in a completely new way. And what it did was open up and start the path of me connecting more clearly to my purpose, what you already asked about.
Yeah, so that was like your defining moment, right? Where you realized that you can no longer live or lead the way that you had before. And it
Yes.
changed everything.
Everything. Yes, everything. And then I thought women really need to know how to be able to get on a plane and head somewhere they've never been and trust themselves to know they'll figure it out. And when they have that kind of confidence and they take that back into their lives, whether it's their careers, their businesses, their relationships, all of that, it fundamentally changes everything. So I'm a huge advocate of and lead women to travel on their own, teach them how to travel on their own as part of what I do.
Wow, that's beautiful. My daughter, actually, before she met her partner, she used to travel by herself all the time. And me as a mom, I would be petrified for her. What are you kidding? Are you crazy? But anyway, she did that a lot. I want to go on to talk about radical self-awareness and conscious leadership, because you speak often about radical self-awareness. Tell my audience, what exactly do you mean by that? Beyond self-reflection or mindset work?
Sure. So there's a combination of our responsibility to ourselves and our accountability to others or to the things that we've committed to. And in our self-awareness, we can become more self-aware, but we can also justify our self-awareness into, whatever. Anybody can make themselves into a guru or a king, right?
Yeah.
And in order to not do that, this concept of radical self-responsibility and radical accountability are part of what I teach in this idea of self-awareness that moves beyond reflection. What that means is that I'm also looking at what my motives are, right? I'm looking at what the consequences are of different situations and taking those into account when I look at things from a more self-aware position or through that lens. So to answer that question, what I would say is learning how to not game ourselves, I think, is a really important component of our self-awareness. There's, I don't know if you've ever heard of the term spiritual bypassing. Have you heard of this?
No.
So John Welwood, who's a great Buddhist teacher, back in the 1970s, he led a Sangha, and he began to realize in the Sangha, this group of Buddhist practitioners, where everybody was responsible for themselves and their own practice, he began to realize that there was this kind of insulating effect happening where you were so focused within yourself that you could unknowingly or well-intentionedly justify your own stories, your own perspectives completely, and then call it superior or call it the truth or the right answer, even in the context of other people. And as he reflected on that, he realized that everybody was so well intentioned, but we're still ending up in this place. And he coined the term spiritual bypassing, this idea that in our quest for greater consciousness, we can drink our own Kool-Aid. We can our own press clippings. And what he wanted, or what he, I guess, promoted, was this idea of looking at that and seeing ourselves more clearly even. Some people talk about that through seeing the shadow self, but they'll even try to see the shadow self in the context of telling a nice, tidy story about the shadow self. And what I like to do when I work with people is help people make friends with the shadow parts of ourselves, but know that we're never going to be able to control that part. And that's not the purpose of it, right? To be able to know ourselves and know that there are parts of ourselves that the mastery looks like understanding, not like controlling, is, I think, really important. Think about, we all have our saboteur, right? I don't know, for some people it's procrastination, for some people it can be any number of things, right? One of my clients, it's anger texting. That's my saboteur, is anger texting. It'll just pop up and I'll just let it all go. But coming to know the part of ourselves and not trying to control it or judge it is part of this process of not spiritually bypassing. And then we're able to look at, what are my motives in that moment? What's going on inside of me? And what are the consequences of my actions? And what is my responsibility to myself? What is my responsibility in the context of others, or what I've committed to? We're able, given that information and asking those questions, we're able to better understand ourselves and others, and live a life and walk a path that does less damage, right? That is smoother and leaves more good in its wake. We're able to feel more connected and fulfilled inside ourselves as a result. Because frankly, if I have somebody who's really mad at me and I've done everything I can do in good faith, right? Do I continue to carry it? Do I keep walking around holding that? Or do I not shut them off and be like, oh, that's their problem? We could say it that way. Or I could say, okay, I'm going to trust them. I'm not going to close my heart off. I'm going to trust them that they're figuring their thing out, and I'm not going to hold it against them, even though it hurt me. That's a deeper form of our own self-awareness that we can get to and leave behind us something better.
But that's not hard, but you need to work on getting to a place like that. I wanted to go back to the shadow self. Can you give a definition or an example of the shadow self that we all carry, correct?
We all carry the shadow. Yes. And I don't want it to sound like a negative, because I think it's gotten a lot of bad rap. I'm trying to think of her name. She wrote The Dark Side of the Light Chasers. Her name will come back to me. Fantastic, amazing woman. What she basically said is, the shadow is not the enemy. And this was back in, I think, the 80s. She said, our shadow self is not the enemy, it's the teacher. And I think that what we have the opportunity for when we start to see our shadow self is to see the parts of ourselves that maybe we don't want to confront, or we definitely don't want to confront. And instead of looking at those parts as something that we have to fix, a lot of like self-help out there and personal development ubiquitously will say, this is how you can work on this. But what they're basically saying is, there's something wrong with you and you need to fix it. And the core of the work I do says, there's nothing wrong with you. You don't need to fix yourself. You're on a path and a journey of learning and growth. You get to decide it. You are whole and perfect inside exactly as you are. And the shadow is a teacher all of us carry with ourselves as an opportunity, not as a punishment or something that we have to judge and hide and overcome. So the shadow could be things like Carolyn Mace in her book, Divine Archetypes, she actually talks about the 4 survival archetypes. And these would be elements of the shadow. So the saboteur is one of them, right? We just talked about the saboteur. She also talks about the victim. So when you feel the victim come up in your life, right? Poor me, or this happened to me, or this person's out to get me, or this is unfair. That's a big one, right? Anytime we have, oh, this is unfair, where the victim has popped in for us as a teacher, right? So the victim is the second one I would mention. The third is what she calls the prostitute. And the prostitute archetype is the one in every one of us that's negotiating for trust and power all the time. So if you think about that, what we will compromise in ourselves to try and get more power, or what we will compromise giving away our trust with ourselves in order to gain something back from somebody else, that's what she calls the prostitute archetype. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
And the fourth one is the child. And Carolyn Mace talks about the child in many forms. There's the wounded child, there's the magical child, there's the nature child. But the child archetype is the part of ourselves we all have that gives us information that's really pure from like our earliest beginnings, our earliest awarenesses. And we can always tap into that to understand. Sometimes we'll find that everything, we get really short tempered and everything's just falling apart. And no matter what we do, it just can't fix. And if we stop and check in, maybe our inner child, right? The child inside is saying, we're not playing enough. I have been working hard a lot. I need to play. Give me some playtime. Or I'm just tired and I need a rest. The child is that part of us that can help us see more simply and clearly our lives and what's going on. So these are all elements of the shadow self that help us see ourselves more clearly and not judge ourselves, not fight ourselves. How much energy do we spend all the time fighting ourselves, fighting who we are, or judging who we are? A lot of time judging ourselves, don't we?
Yes. Yeah, I don't know if you saw me roll my eyes when you said judge.
Yeah.
So, do you help women to tap into their shadow side and recognize it? Because maybe a lot of women don't even know that they have these shadow personalities.
Yeah, absolutely, I do. Because working with the whole self means that the shadow is going to come up. But how I usually encounter that with my clients or with people is they're judging themselves. Oh, because they're feeling really petty about something, or they're jealous of something, or they're angry about something. And then they judge their natural feelings about it. And that's them judging the shadow, right?
Yeah.
That's what that looks like. So it's really always an opportunity when I work with people or I'm interacting with people to offer them a perspective where maybe they could look beyond that judgment. Maybe they could not feel badly about their honest feelings and really understand what those feelings are trying to tell them, because that's really what the shadow parts of ourselves are doing. The saboteur is always trying to connect us to our power and our strength, right? And also to make sure that we're honest about it. Think, for example, if you have to do parts of your business that you hate to do and you just keep procrastinating and putting them off, and the saboteur part of you is popping up in that way, what is it really telling you? Maybe it could be telling you that you need to look at another option for that particular part of your business, bringing in somebody to be able to help do that part. Or maybe it's making you have to be more conscious about what you're doing and find a way of approaching that part of your business that doesn't drain you so much, right? Like
Yeah.
transform. So the saboteur, it's never just a simple, oh, I'm just getting in your way. I'm just going to keep moving into your path and getting in your way and keeping you from going forward. It's always a teacher, an opportunity to understand and learn. And once we do, the saboteur, like, great, good. I let go. You're free to go do that. Or for example, the prostitute, this comes up often where, like, I find that I teach women how to engage conflict because women tend to avoid conflict. And in the prostitute archetype, so that would be a combination of the saboteur and the prostitute, right? In the prostitute archetype, women or people in general, we want to make sure that other people feel good. and that they feel good about us. But what are we willing to compromise in ourselves in order to have other people think well of us or see us in a good light? And so with conflict avoidance, that's a perfect example in the prostitute archetype of giving away our power, negotiating away our power in order to avoid the conflict and feel that people will be more pleased with us or be happy with us, even though we have given away our own power to make that happen, which is never appropriate, never
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to go on to talk about you created leadership programs that move women from mid-level management into the C-suite. What inner shifts really must happen before the outer promotion can actually occur? Because there has to be a whole inner shift that goes on between the two.
There does, for sure. I'm going to answer that question by asking back to you, Susan. So, when you came to the wall with your journey, right? And what people, the furthest point you could go with the people you knew who could help you. And you're like, something more has to happen here. I'm not going to settle for where I am right now. There's got to be more. What was that shift inside of you that happened? How did you come to decide I'm going to go further? I'm going to look for more. What was that?
First of all, I wasn't happy where I was.
Good.
So I already knew that I didn't want to continue doing what it was that I was doing because it didn't resonate with who I am and what I believe in. And so I I actually wasn't the one who initiated the change in me. It just happened from the other party. And then I just knew that I couldn't continue the way I was going. And that's what made the change. Because when you're not happy with what you're doing and it doesn't resonate with who you are and what you believe in, you feel like a fraud. And that's the way I felt. I felt like I wasn't being my authentic self, where now I'm totally my authentic self.
That's the best answer. I think that's the perfect example to use in the context of my work with women to help them accelerate in their careers to where they want to be, moving from mid-level management, for example, into C-suite, or helping entrepreneurs to scale their businesses, helping women move out of professional stagnation into professional engagement and challenge and excitement, right? There's so much that's possible there. And it really is at the core this idea, right? Am I happy? Do I feel like I'm authentic to myself right now? Am I in alignment or am I not in alignment? There are women that I work with where they think that they want to make it to a certain position. And when we start working together, what we in fact find is that they just took on the idea that's where they should be, but it wasn't really aligned for them. And so then
Yeah.
we find what is really aligned. And sometimes that has looked like my working with women to transfer out of a career into a business and them developing their own businesses, or vice versa, moving out of being an entrepreneur into a career position in some form, in some shape, or moving from one career to the next. That happens all the time where what they've done has served them and it's time to change. And that can be really scary for anyone to make a
Yes.
change that big, change careers, especially in your 40s, your 50s, you're like,
60s.
right, what am I thinking? But it's perfect, right? It wouldn't be coming up if it wasn't exactly aligned and right timing. And so helping women, we'll go back to this mid management into C-suite. One of the things that I find that comes up is women, they tend to be really loyal. We as a group tend to be very loyal. And I help women to start to learn and understand the difference between loyalty and being true. What is the difference between loyalty and being true? So, in this particular situation, a woman could be staying at the current organization. She's put so much into it. She's worked so hard. She's built the internal network. She's built her book of business or her client base or whatever, or all of the cachet, and she just has to wait on the company and the powers that be to advance her. And her loyalty keeps her in that position. What I find when I walk into those client situations, I start asking questions to really understand at the deeper level of their body wisdom, which is
Mhm.
something you work with your clients on a lot. At the deeper level of their body wisdom, is that the right place for them right now? And the body doesn't lie. Most of the time, what I find is that they have overstayed their expiration date because of loyalty, and
Yes.
they need to leave the organization and get the next promotion by interviewing and going somewhere else. And the research bears out that for women, being able to move positions between every 2 and 4 years, they actually will advance in their careers 3 times faster. It's 3 times faster
Yeah.
than if they stayed in the organization and just kept doggedly working it from that place of loyalty. So, what I have to do then is work with women to take on this idea of loyalty versus being true to themselves. And you can be true to yourself and be in integrity with your employment or your career, whatever, the people that you work with, and to know that it's time for you to do what's best for you and to make that transition to be able to advance because you know it's the right thing and the right timing, right? So this
Yes.
is one of the things that I do with women. Or they could be confronting some kind of pushback, and they really have to pull on their superpowers and their confidence and go after that promotion internally in the organization they're in, and make it clear what they want and what they expect instead of asking. That's a big change for a lot of women, is to move out of the ask into, here's what I want, this is what I expect. If you can't give it to me, I understand that. No harm, no foul. Just know that I'm going to be going after that because that's what I want. That's what's
Yeah.
important to me. It takes us out of the owing as women, right? Oh, I owe my employer, I owe these people. It takes us, so it's emotional blackmail. And it takes us out of this loyalty loop that we get stuck in and brings us back into our truth, where the employer doesn't owe us, maybe, but they either will recognize us and really work with us to advance us, or they won't. And if they won't, okay, then I will go where I will be able to be recognized and be able to advance.
Yeah, but a woman has to be really comfortable in her own self-worth before she could walk into management and say, this is what I want, this is what I deserve, this is what I'm capable of doing, and if you can't deliver on that, I'm leaving. That takes a lot for a woman because that's usually not the way we operate.
You're right. And it hasn't been. And yet, when I get women to that point where
Yeah,
they
that's
really
great.
do feel their value and know their worth so clearly that they can confidently, without holding on to anything, right? They're just completely open, walk in and stay. That kind of confidence is incredibly attractive and compelling.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Because it shows them that you truly believe in yourself
Right.
and you're confident and you know that you're capable of whatever it is that you're asking for. I love that. I love that.
there's
Excellent.
another there's another piece to it too, which I think is really important. You brought that up, that women she has to know her worth and her value to be able to do that. And one of the things that I help women understand is to change their perspective that references the work environment and bring that perspective to just reference themselves. When we can just reference ourselves instead of validating who we are from external sources, we are going to be able to tap into that worth and value much more quickly, and to tap that confidence that says, oh, wait, my body's telling me this is not a fit any longer. Something needs to change, and I need to make that clear, and give them the opportunity to catch up to that with me. And maybe they will, but maybe they won't. But I'm definitely not going to hold myself back because of fear, or because I'm waiting on them, or I need them to validate my worth and value in some way. That's a big change for women, right?
Yes.
Yes, we need to take that back. I'm going to just say that whole scale. We need to take back valuing and validating our own worth, to ourselves. That is a number one part of the training and the work that I do, the coaching work that I do with women. I also help women to identify the subtle cultural and prejudicial situations that exist that they're working within. Like they may be like, oh, I need to just wait and do this in a little bit because, or I need to hold back my strength, and I need to not come on as my whole self because that will seem too overpowering to those around me or whatever. I help them start to see what they're doing in that and come back into that center place of trusting themselves and call out what was never okay to begin with. That's what I call it. I had this woman, she was a partner at a $5 billion firm, right? And she brought me in to lead all of these trainings for the women in her organization. And when we were just doing our sit downs at the beginning, she wanted to know more about my work and she wanted to dive into that. And I talked to her about this. I talked to her about helping women get to that clarity about what was never okay to begin with. All the light bulbs went on about her. And she said, oh my God, Carmell, that is one of the best concepts I have ever heard. You put into words what I have been fighting against every day of my professional career. Thank you. So that's part of what I help women come into. It's not to blame anybody. It's not to get angry. It's just to recognize, oh, this is what I'm up against. That's not me. And it was never okay to begin with. So I'm going to push back against it to create the space for me that is appropriate, because I don't need to take those cultural ideas or expectations onto myself.
Yeah,
Or just,
absolutely.
yeah.
So you design international retreats that are centered on freedom. What does true freedom mean to you, especially for women who have spent years taking care of others?
Such a loaded question on that one, Susan. Such a loaded question. First of all, I want to say there's so much joy in being able to serve and give to other people, isn't there? Like we have a lot of joy. Culturally, we are born into that as women. If you're female,
Yes.
you are born into serving and giving, and there's an immense amount of satisfaction and fulfillment in it. So I'm not naysaying that at all as I talk about this. But and I will say that we don't know where the center of that pendulum swing is when we're born culturally into this expectation on us. We haven't learned how to recognize that balance between what is good for us and what is just for us, and it's okay to do just for us. I have to justify what I do for myself because it's going to be taking away from somebody else.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a big consideration. I have with the retreats, one of the most common things I would hear from women is, I need to check with my husband. He might be jealous. Or I need to check with my husband to make sure it's okay that I do this, right? And the funny thing is, some men may say that about, I need to check with my wife, but not for the same reasons and not to the same depth and degree. They don't feel an obligation. They just feel that may be a partnership where they're like more equal and they're like, okay, I'm going to spend this money. I just need to check in with you, make sure like this is okay. Whereas women feel this guilt about spending money on themselves that's just for,
Yes.
and they feel guilt about stepping away from their partners or their children for a while to go and do something just for themselves. And that is all culturally created. It
Yeah.
doesn't exist for real in us. We have the opportunity to retell the story of ourselves and our lives and to teach those around us to tell that different story as well, where I don't owe everybody my lifeblood. Instead, I can look at that and say, I choose to be a mom and responsible in these ways, but my children also are their own individual people. And I have the right to do things for me and take care of me, just like I would expect them to do as adults someday for themselves, right? With their partners, to be able to say, we may have some gender dynamics in our relationship that are not equal, and we need to equal those gender dynamics out. We need to look at that and see that for what it really is. These are some of the big questions about freedom that come up for women in their traveling with me, and they're coming on these retreats or these international travel adventures, because what's coming for them is an experience that is purely all them, just themselves in the world on a global level. And what I have found again and again is that women who've never done this, they emerge into that experience and they expand to fill the entire space. They don't hold back.
Yeah.
That's the true nature of who a woman is. Like she just expands. I've watched woman after woman just step out and suddenly she's, wow, the whole world is also like a place for me, just me on my own. Wow, I had no idea that I could be here and have a place in the world that's just me. It's not me being responsible for everybody else or taking care of this or making all of these things happen. And that's one of the wonderful things about the adventures and retreats I lead is that everything's taken care of. So all a woman has to do is just step in and focus on herself, have her own adventures, have her own internal experiences, have time to just reflect and think her own thoughts and observe those thoughts and share them if she wants and go out and adventure on her own. I encourage that a lot in my retreats, and that women actually, I plan it so that women have to go out of their comfort zone more and realize that they're safe, that they create their own safety in the world as they step out and do things. It's amazing to watch this happen.
Yeah, I'm also thinking that it's a great example for women to do that, especially if they have daughters, for their daughters to see that, oh, mommy can leave and go and do her thing and it's perfectly fine. And so that they grow up with that mindset as well, because they follow whatever they learn in the house, right? Generally.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a really good observation, Susan.
Yes.
It is really powerful for mothers and daughters. I've had a mother come and then on a retreat, and then a daughter come later and have her own experience, and them being able to talk about their individual experiences was transformative for their relationship because they both had their own adventure and exploration out into the world. I would also add that it's really powerful for sons to see
Yeah.
that empowerment in their mothers, because it changes the way that they see, if they end up having, if they're straight and they end up having a partner, a woman, right, and they're daughters of their own, they interact with their partner differently. They interact with their own daughters differently from a place of it, of supporting and expecting that kind of independence and knowledge and awareness of self. And I think that's really important.
So I want to close with one final question.
Okay.
My podcast is about healing and rejuvenation in mind, body, and soul. How do you see these three working together in conscious leadership?
Mind, body, and soul working together in conscious leadership. It's something that I actually do bring in all the time to the work that I do. Mind is, I think, fairly straightforward for most people. A lot of things we talked about today are being able to understand the cultural conditioning, the thought processes that we have, being able to call out the conditioning that's there that is not truly aligned with us and know the
Mhm.
difference of that. That in leadership is really quite powerful, because as a leader, you will be interacting with people in all different kinds of settings, all different kinds of personalities, right? To
Yeah,
be able to bring out the best of individuals isn't to try and get them to be all the same. It's to be able to recognize what the best is in somebody, even if they don't know it. And that requires us to be able to see our own conditioning so we can see the conditioning that other people are carrying on themselves. So there's a mind component of that. Mind and what, say the three
mind,
again.
body, and soul.
Mind, body, and soul. Thank you. The body part, I think, is something that in business is becoming more and more an acceptable thing to talk about, where we learn how to have a gut check, for example, or we learn how to listen to where our lives need balance and pay better attention to that,
Yeah.
especially as women, right? That's a big question for women a lot, but men need it as well. So the body being able to be more embodied is an opportunity to be more whole as a leader, more of a whole person. I think seeing that, when I see that in people, what I see is a natural, like I'm comfortable in my own skin. I have confidence that doesn't need other external things to prop it up. My confidence just comes from the fact that I can be in my own skin. I can meet uncertainty. I can encounter the unknown and be curious about it rather than suspicious or afraid. That would be a body response for sure. And then to be embodied as a leader means that we're able to feel and access that deeper purpose as a leader that causes people to trust us, to know that we are engaged in what we're doing and how we're leading. And that trust that goes a long distance, right? So being embodied as a leader, it may be a harder thing because the further up the chain and the bigger the chain it is, the more ego can play into it. And the ego is the opposite of being embodied. So
Yes.
there's learning how to see and meet their ego. Again, saboteur, shadow self, right? How to meet and see their ego helps them to shift out of that into a more embodied form of leadership. And that is transformational. So the more embodied leadership really can be game changing for any organization. And then finally, soul, which is a really good question because it seems like soul and business are the furthest points on the spectrum from each other. And yet, what we find is that people will, on a team, will move mountains for the soul that is brought into leadership, right? They
Yeah.
will do the impossible over and over again. They will give their very best and be appreciated for it, not exploited, but truly appreciated, because soul goes both directions, right? As a leader, you can have soul in what you're doing, and it's important, right? It inspires people in the very best of ways, and it must recognize and acknowledge what is given on the other side so that feedback loop is complete.
Yeah.
When people feel that acknowledgement for who they are and also what they contribute, two separate things, who they are and what they contribute, you create incredible satisfaction and opportunity for fulfillment in a job or in the work that's being done. People will go above and beyond. They will give more, and a company will thrive, an organization will thrive when we bring soul into it. And we know what we're doing when we bring soul into it that way.
Wow, that's a perfect answer. Thank you, Carmel. Tell my audience where they could find you, how they could work with you, any information that you'd like to leave with.
Great. The number one way to reach me is direct message me through my LinkedIn link. I have a link to be able to schedule a strategy discovery session, to look at coaching, to look at bringing me in for trainings that I lead in organizations. Those are the two main ways that people can reach out to me most easily. Also through my website that's in the process of a revamp right now. So LinkedIn can probably be the more direct way at the moment. But my executive coaching work, I work one-on-one with clients, and that can look like a handful of sessions. It can look like a year program or ongoing support for what you're doing in your organization or in your life. With the trainings, I do all sorts of different kinds of trainings. Right now, I'm working on some really exciting ones to work with top key female talents in a multi-billion-dollar international organization, but then also working to create and deliver trainings to the wealth of the organization across the world at all different levels that they can engage in as they desire. So there are lots of different opportunities with that I do. Mostly, I think what I would say in answer to that is the work I do is transformational. It really is based in developing greater awareness of self. And in that, Harvard Business Reviews actually talked about the importance of self-awareness for ourselves in our professional careers and as leaders. So the work I do is and has been for many years focused in this way to really develop self-awareness. Better, more self-aware leaders are better leaders, and they're better decision makers. They're better at creating team cohesion and being able to keep the churn rate down, all of that, so organizations can thrive. I love to see that both the people in an organization and the clients are both happy, right? This is part of our world, part of our reality. Shouldn't it be a goal that we work for everybody to be able to have fulfilling opportunities, and that everybody's able to be engaged using their best, their genius, their greatest talents, and feel fulfillment in that? That's what I do.
Yes, I love that. I hope that's the way of the future for the working class and corporations. There's definitely been improvement in large corporations for sure, but it still needs a little bit more work, I believe.
It does. Yep.
Yes.
We've got more to do for sure. And I appreciate all the work that you're doing with health and body for the mind, body, soul connection. Because as I read through what you're doing, I very much resonate my own life path, my own journey. I very much resonate with all of that. And I think it's so important. Thank you for doing this, Susan.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. I appreciate it. It was a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much, Carmel. I'd love for you to come back again.
I'd love that. I would love to come back. We've got so much more we can talk about. Yeah, we can play with that for sure. And thank you for having me. It really has been an honor to be here. Thank
You're
you.
welcome. As we wrap up today's conversation with Carmell Clark, I invite you to take a moment and really sit with what resonated for you. So much of what we talked about today reminds us that true leadership, healing, and freedom don't come from doing more. They come from becoming more aware of who we already are. Mel's journey is a beautiful reminder that even after loss, change, or starting over, we are never too late to reconnect with our purpose and create a life that feels deeply aligned in mind, body, and soul. Transformation begins within, and when we honor that inner work, the outer world naturally begins to shift. If today's episode spoke to you, I encourage you to explore Carmel's work and see how her message of conscious leadership and radical self awareness might support you in your own next chapter. Thank you for spending this time with us. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, share it with a friend who may need to hear this message, and also kindly leave a review. It truly helps the show reach more women who are ready to heal, grow, and step into their power. Until the next time, I'm Susan LoPresti, reminding you to always nurture your wellness, mind, body, and soul.